So let's talk about the new Necrons rules update, which despite being a fairly short document, does contain a really quite massive nerf to their strongest attachment in the game right now. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Necrons, and in this video I thought we'd take a look at the new rules changes that Games Workshop has brought forth for the faction. Let's talk about the document in general and what exactly it is and what it means, and then go through each of the changes in turn. The rules update today is basically the post-Codex rules update for the faction. Necrons and AdMech dropped at the same time, and it looks like there's nothing for the AdMech yet at least, but this doc has appeared for the Necrons on Games Workshop's download page, and basically just does a few bits of commentary and a couple of rules changes for things within the book. So far since the Codex has come out, the Necrons have been doing okay in tournaments, though I feel like the vast majority of lists that people are using are Canoptek Court ones and heavily building around Wraiths and Catan, maybe some Immortals, but that feels like that might be changing after this. It feels like the book does have enough raw strength with its best builds, but maybe just isn't particularly well internally balanced with the other detachments and some of the datasheets being kind of poor. For this document, I bear in mind that it absolutely is not supposed to be a balance change of any sort. Games Workshop's mentality with these is to try and make the Codex fully playable, fix any rules that just flat out didn't work for one reason or another, and occasionally they change something where they've written a rule that is functioning very differently to how they'd intended it would be. That seems to be the case with the Immortals today. Any further changes, I guess, would wait until the balanced data slate comes out. That should be here later this month, though it maybe is a bit uncertain exactly how much changes the Necrons or the AdMech would get, given that their codexes came out really quite recently. They might give them some small limited changes. I feel like they're probably not going to vastly upend the entire point section of both codexes here though. In any case, this update is very short and sweet. Games Workshop generally seem to be needing less error correcting when they produce their codexes now, which is definitely a good thing in my opinion. And the fact that they only needed 4 FAQs to fix the rest of the codex is definitely way better than many of the books that they published in 9th edition. Moving on to the big news though, and by far the most important change in the FAQ and Errata document, is this change to the Cynosure of Eradication stratagem within the Canoptek Court, the Necron's strongest attachment. Basically this is breaking the combo that was perhaps one of the easiest and most obvious damage combos when the Codex dropped. The idea is that you take a unit of 10 Immortals with the Tesla carbines, add a Plasmancer into the unit to get you a whole load of sustained hits on a 5+. Make sure you're getting as many 5+ hits as you possibly can, given the power matrix ability within the Canoptek Court. If they've got a Plasmancer in it, then they've got the Cryptek keyword, so you get to reroll all hits there. And then you use this Cynosure of Eradication stratagem for 2 CP or 3 with an Overlord, and that gives the unit devastating wounds with its attacks, and when you've got a staggering amount of attacks that can all reroll the wound roll against enemies on objectives, it just means that the unit belts out a pretty extraordinary amount of devastating wounds. I believe it's around 11 or 12 on average if you target something on an objective, or around 6 if you don't. It was certainly enormously powerful and will basically inflict some pretty grave injuries to just about any unit in the game, though admittedly it did require quite a lot of character setup, and the overall unit just really isn't that durable for the cost as well, which maybe lessened its impact just a tiny bit. In any case though, it looks like Games Workshop didn't think that this combo was intended when they wrote the rules, and as such they've changed the stratagem. Now the Devastating Wounds ability only applies to actual Cryptek or Canoptek models, and it will no longer work on things that were merely led by Crypteks. So it means that, say, any Immortals or Necron warriors that Crypteks might be leading, they can no longer really make use of this stratagem in any meaningful way. It does mean though that the 2 command point cost for the stratagem is really quite a big investment on anything else. I guess the next best target is probably a unit of Wraiths. I guess if they're attacking with their claw attacks against something really quite tough, maybe with a 2+ armor save perhaps, it could still be worth it. It is pricey at 2 CP though. I don't really think it would be worth swapping to whip coils to try and make the stratagem more effective. I think it's still better with the claws, and then maybe have this if you absolutely need every single iota of damage. Overall though, for people who'd gone out to collect and build up Tesla Immortals in the meantime, this must be pretty annoying. Kind of an unexpected nerf really, and it will certainly change the way that people build army lists for the Canoptek Court. I guess bringing back more focus to the actual Canoptek units, which might have been Games Workshop's design I guess. I still don't think the Tesla Immortals are completely useless with the Plasmancer, but they're not going to be your primary damage dealers anymore. They're going to be for hoovering up enemy lighter troops. But AP0 and lack of devastating wounds means they won't be very general purpose now. Otherwise, we've got 3 other FAQs that aren't anywhere near as impactful, but still are useful to know. First up, we've got one from the Obeisance Phalanx that allows the Triarch Stalker to use the Territorial Obsession stratagem. That's one that you can use in the command phase to give your unit extra objective control, so you could potentially use it to flip an objective from your opponent's control into yours. Previously, it gave you rules for being able to use it on vehicles, but technically you couldn't, given that the stratagem stated that it affected the Triarch Praetorians and not just the Triarch keyword in general, which is what the Stalker gets. They basically just changed that around so this thing is a viable target of the stratagem. I guess if you're playing the detachment, it's kind of tempting to have at least one of these around. They can use the +1 to wound core rule, but still I don't really feel like this is the most impactful change in the world. The detachment in itself isn't the most played and is considered a bit on the weaker side, and the Triarch Stalker is considered a datasheet that's not particularly strong either. Another one that I found kind of interesting was this being an FAQ rather than a rules change. This one's kind of two clarifications in one. This one applies to the Conquering Tyrant stratagem from the Awakened dynasty and the Locust Destroyer's core rule. Both of these rules have sort of a split part special rule, where one part gives them reroll hit rolls of 1, and then they go on to talk about a second part that gives you full hit rerolls. For the Locust Destroyers, if they target the closest units, they get to reroll hit rolls of 1, and then that progresses to full hit rerolls if they target units on objectives. For the Conquering Tyrant stratagem, it's getting hit rerolls of 1 if you're within half range, and if your unit's led by a character, you get full hit rerolls. Though at least in my mind, from the wording of the special rules, I think quite a lot of people were confused as to whether or not you needed the first part to activate the second part. So say for the Locust Destroyers, whether you needed to satisfy both conditions to get the full hit rerolls. From this FAQ though, they confirm that you don't. It is quite a big deal, particularly for the Locust Destroyers. Means that if they want to try and destroy something on an objective, it doesn't necessarily need to be the closest thing to allow them their big hit rerolls, which is pretty big, and particularly so with a Locust Lord, allowing those lethal hits to go off a bit easier on 5s. Seems good news for both rules here, and I did feel that this one was a little bit ambiguous and Games Workshop might have ruled it either way. Overall, a small win for those units though, I suppose. Finally, we've got a clarification on the Cosmic Precision stratagem. Easily the single most powerful stratagem in the Hypercrypt Legion. It's one where you basically get to spend 1 CP, and then one unit that was either in Strategic Reserve or in Hyperphase. They can turn up anywhere on the board that's outside of 3 inches of enemy models, and it was particularly powerful on units that couldn't deep strike normally, as it essentially gave them a deep strike special rule for that turn, in addition to the close positioning advantage, making it just monumentally strong. It seems that it's a favoured idea to use this to teleport things like the Nightbringer straight into the enemy lines and give them an enormous threat to deal with, but it's just generally powerful for repositioning and could be good for objective or secondary work as well. Basically, Games Workshop just decided to confirm that it does indeed work this way. I think just because some people might find it kind of unintuitive that it just gives you deep strike but kind of on the stealth. And it's kind of nice to see that this one wasn't an oversight, as if you nerfed this one then you would have hit a massive blow to the Hypercrypt Legion, which seems to be the other really quite strong Necron detachment right now. Basically no change here, but I feel like it was probably helpful to clarify it, given that it just wasn't really very intuitive. Overall, in terms of competitive Necron strength though, I would say this probably amounts to a nerf, given that you've broken a really quite strong combo in the best attachment. The Hypercrypt thing isn't really a change, though I feel like the reroll confirmation is kind of handy for the Locust Destroyers. Let me know your thoughts on the changes in any case. Do you think that that Devastating Wounds combo was sensible for Games Workshop to take out or not? If you enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.